Hey, what is up everybody? This is Blackblade, and when you make videos for 5 years, you get a lot of constructive feedback. Two of the most common things I get is my voice level, which hopefully I'm getting right this time, and that I should make more videos on new releases. Now I agree, hence why I've been doing so lately, but there are several reasons as to why. One of which being that I'm a broke, unemployed minor. That's the main one, actually. But the other reason is that most new games I just don't find interesting to talk about. There are several exceptions to this, of course, including today's topic, Sekiro. Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice is a stealth action game and the newest game by From Software, known for the Soulsborne games and Tenchu series, which this was originally intended to be a sequel to. Announced at Xbox's panel in E3 2018, this was my most anticipated release of the year, as I was interested in its premise based on Japanese folklore and the cool gameplay mechanics showcased. Now I haven't really played that many From Software games, noteworthy ones in particular, so I'll be going into this game with the mindset of a relative newcomer to the studio. With that in mind, does this game hold up to expectations? Well, yes, but let's find out how exactly. This is Sekiro: Shadows Die Twice, the review. And we've come across the most difficult part of analyzing modern games. Good graphics is kind of a staple at this point. In fact, for some developers, it's the only thing you can rely on being good. Here, it's great, though more importantly, better than I expected. For starters, wow, the scenery is gorgeous. While I do this anyway when gathering footage, there were times where I just wanted to look around and take everything in. I especially love the lighting. Not the natural lighting, though that is pretty good, but the use of fire really shone through in this game. My biggest concern about this aspect was, well, I still have an original Xbox One, which for the past 3 years now has had several anticipated releases run like garbage, more so than even the base PS4 version. This is something From Software said they'd work on for this game, and I can confirm that they did. Even if it's only 30 frames per second, the important thing is that it's consistent for most of the game, only experiencing slowdown I found during the last third, and even then sparingly. Unfortunately, this coupled with the motion blur you can't turn off on consoles, and another issue I'll get to in a bit, makes the game feel disorienting at times, causing achy eyes and churned stomachs. This keeps it from a perfect score here, but playing it in controlled intervals deals with it, and hey, 9 out of 10 ain't bad. More like Sekiro: Shadows Die every 2 minutes. This game was a real joy to play for me at all times. Stealth, something I tend to not have fun with in games, works great in tandem with the game design, being forgiving enough to keep you engaged, while challenging and useful enough that it requires a healthy amount of patience and awareness. The swordplay is another thing entirely though. Now to give you a bit of knowledge about myself, I unironically studied the blade for over 2 years of my life with Gumdo classes, aka Korean sword fighting, alongside practicing a lot of my spare time. With that experience of what it feels like to really use a sword, I can say confidently that no game I've played captures that better than this. This is also thanks to the sound design, but this game does a terrific job in capturing the rhythm and tension of a proper sword fight in every encounter, especially boss fights. The posture mechanic is a major reason as to why, because in reality, fights are more than just hitting your adversary, but more wearing them down, keeping your guard up, and recovering where you slip. As a game mechanic, it means you have to play up close a lot of the time, but still defensively, which I think is a ton of fun. This isn't all though, because another major element is the prosthetic arm, offering an array of special abilities in certain scenarios. I've heard people say they can feel very niche and yeah, kinda, but the best ones, particularly the shuriken and folded umbrella, are quite versatile, and the only reason they didn't see as much use was me being overly conscious about how many spirit emblems I used. Lastly, of course, we gotta talk about difficulty. I mean, it seems these are the only developers that have permission for most game journalists to make difficult games. And is Sekiro difficult? Yes! My gosh, the amount of trouble I had on most of these fights was insane. There were maybe 2 moments in the entire game where I didn't feel at risk of dying. But I wouldn't agree in calling this one of the most difficult games I'll ever play because, despite all of this, it's fair. My failures were either of my own doing or something with the controller, for the most part. The only issue was, appropriately enough, the biggest in the game, the camera. Ugh, the lock-on in this game screwed me over far more than it should have. Whether it be multiple enemies and not switching between the right ones, or more frequently, close quarters combat being a pain in the Several times, the lock-on would just go away, leaving you open to an unfair attack. The lone shadow fight in the well I had to cheese my way through to beat, because with the flurry of attacks in such a tight corridor, it was a nightmare fighting this boss as intended. The mechanics, difficulty, and bosses are great, but with this, it has to settle with an 8 in gameplay. I said it already, but the sound design makes the already amazing swordplay that much more exciting. That clang when you block a strong attack is just...
Oh, that's hot.
Other standouts include the grappling sound, and some of the little details like kicking rocks around. Now, as I'm half deaf, so I struggle hearing regardless, I had the dialogue in English, and while it was good for the most part, there is a line delivery that is so amazing in this game, I want to see it become a meme.
My name is Kyobu Masataka Oniwa!
I love this. Just think about how much potential it has. Oh no, I'm not doing it. This is your job. Lastly, the soundtrack, while occasionally missing that oomph in fights, is beautiful, really taking me back to the pleasant winds-heavy music we'd listened to in those Gumdo classes. Here were some of those that particularly stood out to me. To my initial surprise, this is the best part of this game, and I give it a 9 out of 10. So my plan was for this review to come out last week. What I didn't realize was that this game is pretty lengthy, the longest I made a video of, in fact. Sekiro has a ton of content, most of which is open to you as soon as you fight the Blazing Bull, and even somewhat before then with the Harada estate. There are several side missions, characters to interact with, and a great deal of world to explore without being so big that it's overwhelming. Doing a sizable amount of the optional content, it took me a little over 35 hours to beat this game, and there's still a lot of stuff that I missed, like every single headless fight. A lot of this time was also due to how difficult the game is though. You know I gave Spartan Assault a hard time because it took only 3 hours to finish? Well, it took me over an hour longer just to beat the final boss. Now, I've heard some people complain that they don't do a good job in pointing you where to go to complete a side mission, but I didn't have an issue with that. The bigger underlying problem I found was that, with the exception of the Harada estate, all of the optional content feels unimportant. I think it would have been more interesting if some of the prosthetic tools were offered as rewards instead of just upgrade materials with some attachments bought from merchants. For those insane enough to want even more after completing all the game's base and optional content, this game includes a staple in modern From Software games, New Game Plus, amping the difficulty and resetting the characters and events. To summarize, this game has plenty to do and manages to keep you engaged enough to do it, earning a 9 in content. Well, as I said at the beginning, what drew me in was this game's mythos and heavy relation to Japanese folklore. It's very clear when playing that this is in fact the main draw for the game's story, as the narrative, while still engaging, is designed to be simplistic so that you can gain the opportunity to explore the world. Wait, didn't I just say that? There's also some great effort put into characters' backgrounds. The main protagonist, called Wolf by most, is an orphan found on a battlefield and taken in by a powerful warrior to become a shinobi. After his training is complete, he enters the service of the divine heir of the dragon's heritage. Whew, that's a mouthful. And is sworn to be his protector. There's more to it, of course, that I can't say without giving stuff away, but I think the writing is very strong here. And yet, for reasons I can't fully explain, it seems unfit for a perfect score. Part of this is likely because I'm a little more strict in the story in games because it's a little more subjective, but I think it's down to a few little things. The biggest one I can think of is that there seems to be a lot of downtime, as in large gaps between important plot points going on. As such, I could see a disconnect when it comes to being invested in the story, and that's rather unfortunate as, otherwise, I'd say this is a very good example of a more laid-back approach to narrative influence. I'll probably get some flack for this, but I'm giving the story an 8 out of 10. Sekiro is one of those increasingly rare times when a game I'm looking forward to delivers on its expectations. With exciting combat and a beautiful score with several scenarios to experience, this game earns an 8.6 out of 10. If you're like me and a little more hesitant on getting new games, this is one of those ones that you would benefit from doing so just as I did. Anyways, that's gonna be it for this video. Hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to slice that like button in half. Subscribe to my channel if you are new. And seeing as this is the first time I'm reviewing a new game, I'm eager to hear how I did. So let me know in the comments below what you thought. That way the next one can be even better. Once again though, hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.